Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday. Hi, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday, and you may have missed her, but she's back. I have the beautiful Kate Bromley back on Walnut Wednesday. Hello, Kate.
Hello, it feels like so long, but I'm so glad to be back.
We're doing it. We're still doing it. Walnut, if you haven't met Kate before, I will get her to introduce herself. But Kate is my best friend living on the other side of the world. And we started this little trend on episode 10 where I had her as a guest, and then she popped on every 10 episodes, and then we sort of navigated through it not being the 10th episode. And yeah, so now it's just whenever we make it work. So Kate, I'll get you to introduce yourself if there is a walnut listening who has never met you before.
Yeah, so as Lara said, I'm Kate, and I think it was great that you said are on the other side of the world because usually it's been in London, which is where I currently am. But I think last time I appeared, I was in Dubai. And maybe another time I was in New Zealand. But yeah, basically, I met you in New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand. We met at uni. We've been friends ever since, even throughout me living overseas for the last 8 years. And as of, I guess, almost a year ago, that overseas location has been fluid, let's say. So still overseas, but kind of nomadic. And yeah, and I work in film production and directing. That's what I do.
I love that. Yes. And I wanted to talk to you, Kate, this week a little bit about um, the time that you have had and how you've kind of navigated through it, because I believe when we last spoke to you, we did a sort of recap of the El Camino walk that you did, I think. Was that the last one? Um, and so since then, you obviously have had to your lease ended for your flat. You had to pop all your stuff in storage, and you've decided on the, well, not really on the fly, but a little bit on the fly of what your next move is. You still haven't signed a lease or anything like that. Tell us what you've sort of been doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it was the last time I ended up basically, I put my things in storage and left my flat before I went traveling on the Camino. That was already a plan, but leaving the flat wasn't. It was boring, but cost of living and everything and rent was rising. And I was like, do you know what? I can't really afford to stay in this flat. I'm not going to force it. So I put my stuff in storage, thinking it'll be as long as, those travels. And and now it's like I say, I think that was April last year. And now we're in, early 2024. And so, yeah, I guess when I got back from the Camino and we spoke when I was in Dubai, so I'd already kind of made that move, or that sort of short-term move or
Oh,
whatever.
sorry.
That's where there was some work opportunities with good friends of mine. And I really was just kind of like, I had like a week fretting. I definitely think I talked about that, like a week fretting of like, do I make the decision and then made the decision. So, which was great. And I was there off and on since September till like the beginning of February, 2024. So, and like, oh my gosh, it was a whirlwind. So like quite a lot of projects going on. One really big one, which took me to Kenya, it took me to India. And I got to kind of do more directing and more sort of creative stuff, as well as my kind of constant, which is producing. A lot of challenges, like different kind of country, culture, people, even just currency, like having to get your head around that when you're doing budgets or whatever. Um, and it was full on. It got really full on at the end, and there was the Christmas holidays, and I saw you briefly, too briefly, when I came back to New Zealand for like 10 days or something. And I think there was just a point where I was in New Zealand, traveling back to Dubai, going off to India next. And I was like, I'm pre-tired. I am pre-tired for what I have to do. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I remember actually because that was just as I was with you. I could think I was even getting visas sorted while I was with you. And like when I said goodbye, I was going over to Wellington, staying the night, and then the journey started that next day, like straight into the new year. And I'm super proud I did it. India was incredible. I kind of got to take on the, director producer role all on my own, on location, and yeah, it was a crazy and amazing experience. But yeah, basically end of like January, beginning of February, I've come back to London to chill. Like actually not for another project, not for good necessarily. I just was like, cool, time to reassess again. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm literally like couch surfing. I'm at my friend's place right now. So yeah.
And I feel like that all those experiences, and you mentioned how like proud of yourself that you are, it did come at this like price, because it felt like such like my blood pressure is like rising, like it felt so intense, and that every moment was just like a checkbox, like I just need to get this done, I just need to get this done, and you weren't able to well, from the little glimpse that I saw, to just take a beat, to just have a second to breathe. And all of that time from when you got back to going to Dubai, sort of back and forth, that living out of a bag thing as well, like I like it for a short time, but I couldn't imagine it for that long. I'd love to know how that kind of has affected you necessarily.
Mm.
Or still now, I
Yeah,
suppose you're still a little bit living out of a bag, aren't you?
I absolutely am. Yeah, I've got like a storage locker, a suitcase at another friend's place, and a bag here. So like I'm so grateful to have such good friends. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think and in Dubai I was lucky too because I went there to work with two friends of mine who put me up for the first couple months. I mean, I was living on a couch, sleeping on a couch, but honestly, it was like, cool, I'm sorted. But I think one of the biggest things I've found is that you're constantly a little, well, at least for me, I felt in conflict between like that present thing where you're like, I don't have to worry about bills. I don't have to worry about rent. I've
Mm,
got a sofa. It's all very chill. I've got very few belongings, kind of that lightness, but then also always having to think about the next move. So, what am I going to do
yeah.
when that 2 months is up? And is that going to cost? Like, how much is that going to cost? And like the logistics of moving your stuff around, or like needing popping back to London and thinking, I don't have any winter clothes with me. So now I have to go to my storage locker to get out all my winter clothes. So just kind of feeling like there's, yeah, I guess a conflict between the lightness and the freedom of, I guess, that present and being able to sort of, you want to take that all in and really enjoy it. But then sometimes you actually feel like the present's being stolen by classic thing of the future. Like when you have a flat or you have a house and you know what the payment is and it's all secure, then you're not thinking about the next move every
Mm,
day, you know? So sometimes I felt like I was sort of always almost like a student in the sense of there was always something in the back of my mind kind of niggling at me, like you really should sort out an Airbnb, or like you gotta book a flight, or whatever. Um, so it's quite polarizing, and I think for me, I want to my next thing that I've kind of worked out with the having had the longevity and the security, and I loved elements of that, and then having that backpack mentality and loving elements of that is I kind of want something in between where it's more like a 3 month stint, 4 month stint somewhere that's mine that I can unpack my bag in, huge, and that gives me more time to enjoy it before you have that thing in the back of your mind having to come back up again. So that was a long ramble, but that's kind of
yeah.
yeah.
No, that makes sense. And Walnut, I wasn't meaning about like living out of a backpack, like the need for material things at all. It was kind of just like a metaphor for not having a place to rest your weary head. And I remember now we did talk a little bit about decision making, didn't we? And how difficult it is when you're in those moments. How the fuck are you supposed to decide what what the next flight was going to be or what the next thing was going to be? But then once you've decided, you can kind of ease into the plan. That made it kind of easier. I was talking with someone about it the other day, where it's so tricky when you're trying to settle in on the option. Um, and you've done quite a lot of that throughout this entire time. I'm so tired for you sometimes.
Yeah, I think acknowledging the weariness was important too. I do remember feeling like I'd worked really hard on that project. It was quite a big project for the last few months in Dubai, and like my kind of time on that project was coming up. The project hadn't actually ended, but my time on it had, which again was like something like I love, seeing things through, but sometimes as a freelancer, you have to hand that over and that's fine. And I needed the break and I needed the to kind of decompress from that because I am someone who can work in high pressure and do the running and do the checkbox and all of that you were saying, but I run out of steam as we all do, but I would consider myself someone that like I can't do that for months and months on end and stay healthy. And I know that. And I don't think it's a weakness. And I really admire people who could do it longer. But I also know that some people do it longer and they shouldn't because they think they have to. And it's really damaging. I used to be like that. So I think it came at a good time to sort of come back to London with a bit of a clean slate and like I think I consider London more of the home base now, interestingly enough, as my like place to reassess. And I think my sort of next step is like I have another decision to make as always, but I've reassessed of not worrying too much about the longevity of that decision. I think I used to fret so much being like, well, I want to be there for the next few years. Well, is that the move I need to make? And I think now I'm just going, what kind of amount of time do I really need to plan out that is comfortable for me? And when I decide 3 months, it's actually a lot easier to decide where you want to be for 3 months than it is to be like the mindset of where could be my new forever, you know?
Yeah.
Like right here in London, I love London, but I don't feel that pull to like put the roots down and get the flat and commit to all these things again. Um, but I'm really enjoying, despite the miserable weather, seeing my friends, and I've got great people I can stay with and like that, familiarity um and I'm just kind of like, cool, I'll probably be here for about a month, and that's what I've told people, and I'm pretty comfortable with that being as much information as I have right now.
Yeah, and that just willingness, I think a big learning out of it all is just that knowing that if circumstances change, you'll be okay because you've
Mhm.
literally done those really hard things of like, oh my God, where am I going to live? I don't know. And you've had those little freak outs, and we've talked about them all together, Walnut, as well. And now it's just like, oh yeah, and if I commit to 3 months, great, the decision's made. But also, if I don't like it, so what?
Totally.
You've just
I mean, there
changed.
will, yeah, and I mean, as we know, there will be more freakouts. But I feel like maybe just there's always different things that I'll challenges and all that. But I do feel like I've kind of um crossed like or overcome some obstacle of mine by putting myself like the last year in the position where it was just like I would leave it till like 3 or 4 days before I had to book my flight somewhere to book it, which I would never be like. And it was weird, but like you say, now I've got that retrospective viewpoint of, but it worked out and it was okay and it didn't break the bank. And I've got a lot of air miles. Maybe I can do an upgrade next time. And so like it does make that you build that history to make the decisions next a bit easier, but then who knows, like I say, I'll freak out at another point for sure.
Yeah, I was just thinking like it's really easy for us, you and I both right now, Kate, to sit back and be like, yeah, and this is what I've done. But in those moments, like honestly, Walnut, you should friggin' hear us when
I
we're one
know.
either one of us is having a meltdown. We've managed to not quite melt down at the same time, which is like beyond beautiful, so that we can hold space equally for each other. But those little breakdowns are really interesting. I challenge us, I think, Kate, to maybe one time jump on a recording when we are mid breakdown, just so we can kind of like have that example of what it's actually
Oh,
like.
absolutely. Yeah, and like I mean, I think that I mean that's a really good point as well because it's like kind of talking through it and I think one thing I've noticed with a lot of other people is they don't want to talk about their fears or their difficulties or like because they sound like failures, or they sound like they're indecisive, like they're embarrassed. Like I sometimes, you got to pick your people, but sometimes I think, do people just think like, sort yourself out because you're complaining or you're, dithering or you're like crying about, oh, I don't know what to do. And, but I genuinely couldn't move forward if I didn't express all of those fears and all of those things. Like, I can talk myself into a solution if I'm talking to someone else.
Yeah.
Or at least get that idea of sometimes someone will say, okay, so what will it look like if this, that, and the other? And you realize, no, you don't want that. And it's like, well, there's something, that helps, even if it's just finding out you don't want to do something. So I think that breakdown thing, I mean, we make it sound like the like mental breakdown, but it genuinely is us breaking down the actual situation. And like if you don't let all your feelings out, it just muddles and clouds your logical brain anyway. So it's
Mm.
like you told me this a million times, like it's part of the process, Kate. You won't feel like this forever because it sucks. But if you fight it, it just continues.
Yeah, I love that. And Walnut, if you're curious, Kate is a projector, and I believe you are an emotional authority, but also you have the soundboarding throat center thing. So if you're sitting there going, just so you know. Um, and Kate, we were talking a little bit earlier about that being being present thing. And do you feel like you've found the opportunity to sit with stuff now, or are you still feeling like you're on to the next one, on to the next one, now that you've had a step back from the busyness?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say both still. So I'd say that I don't think I'll ever be a person who doesn't have the things in the back of their mind. And I'm very good at like list writing and things, I think part of ADHD and stuff like that. Whether I have that or not, I've self-diagnosed and it's helpful. But like knowing I won't forget it by writing it down helps me. And I think that's a useful thing for anyone to do. But what I've stopped doing is being like, you have to do all of these things, like make these decisions or make these plans or book this thing or whatever. I just decide what two things or three things do you really need to do today. And then once I do that, it's like, it's not giving myself permission, but it's that thing of being like, I genuinely won't feel good being just enjoying myself, being present if these things are bothering me. And so by doing one or two things, it's sort of like I could feel that productivity. I could feel that sort of um, whatever, like a little bit of the future admin's been ticked off. And then I can really enjoy, going out to see a friend or going to the cinema or blobbing or whatever, because I just wouldn't enjoy it. So I'm kind of just like, I've scaled back on like my own ridiculous expectations of everything I should be doing. And I
Mm.
do the things that I'm like, this is what I actually genuinely do need to do. Um, and it's usually not a lot. That's the thing. And I mean, I'm not talking about work and jobs and stuff. I mean, genuinely, like while I'm taking this time to see people and I'm between work and I've got a couple of little things ticking around, I'll just be like a couple of things on the list, like I can't even think of an example, but like, I don't know, some emails I really need to send and they take like 10 minutes. And it's like, I feel so much better when I've done that, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but being present, something I do struggle with, I will say.
Yeah, I think, and as someone, I obviously like to trial it all the time and try to say to be present. And I tell everyone you should try to be present because I'm always constantly working on presence because I too am a list maker, overthinker, OCD, and as you were talking about those tasks, I was thinking about myself where, and I'm pretty sure we've discussed it before, but like I have to do things so that I feel like I'm allowed to relax, such as emptying the dishwasher. And then if I'm emptying the dishwasher, I may as well put a load of washing on before I empty the dishwasher so that it's productive and it's going, and then blah, 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 blah. And then I've done all these little tasks that I don't need to do them. I kind of want to do them so they're off my plate. And then I finally come to lie on the couch, and then Geordie gets home. And then I haven't had my alone time, and I've wasted all of my alone time just doing tasks. And I get really frustrated and pissed off with myself. And yeah, I'm in a position at the moment where I'm kind of just forced to be incredibly present. And it's really wild and really
Mm.
weird because I don't know. I just don't know how I'm gonna feel the next day. And I'm really just from each day to the next. And I'm just rolling with it. And it's so weird to be actually present. Like, I feel like I need to do like another episode on this when I've kind of like picked it apart a little bit. But I, it is, we know it's so important, but it is such a hard thing to really grasp because because you and I, especially Kate, we are the people that are like boom, 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 check the list, have a list in the first place. That it's just a really bizarre feeling when you actually do hit, oh, I'm just in the moment now, and you know, does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I think it totally does. And like I think I I don't know about you, but because I've operated so much with that list thing and the mentality, like, and that thing of permission, like, is it permission if I genuinely don't feel comfortable relaxing in a dirty house? You know what I mean? So I'm like, it's a real kind of, it's a sort of catch 22 because then you
Mm.
clean it, it's a relaxing space, but then you have less time to relax. But maybe, but anyway, the being present thing, I think I've noticed now that sometimes that's what I've craved. And I've not been able to recognize that craving because I've not practiced it and I've not really listened to it. And it's really it's not something you can write on a list. Be present, just go where the wind takes you. And I think having my list always keeps me secure. But sometimes I'm like, don't give a, I don't care. Don't worry about the list. It'll be there tomorrow. Is it like I can do that self talk now, being like, are any of these things urgent enough that one more day is a problem? And if the answer is no, again, that's almost like the thing. I'm like, cool, good. That's all I needed to sort of tell myself. And then I'll just be like, I'm going to go on a walk today, you know? Actually, like doing things like that. We talked about this a long time ago. And it's funny because I use the term put yourself on the list, which is, again, now
Yeah.
I'm talking about this listing. I'm like genuinely saying put relax or goddess time or whatever in the list to trick yourself into being like this is a priority. How deeply I was ingrained on that, but it's still true. And that thing of like if you're struggling with a lot of thoughts or feelings or you know rushing about the future or things, is that going for a walk and moving really helps. And like that is obviously not any kind of revelation. I've been told this for years and I'm finally doing it and I'm like, damn, they're right, you
But
know.
when you're in a rut though, that's the last thing you feel like doing. So that's where it's amazing and helpful to talk about it with a safe person to give
Mm.
you so they can give you the push and your common reply, not yours, Kate, but like in general, the reply usually is, I know, you know?
Yeah, it's so true. And it's like I actually had this really good chat with my friend the other day because I came over and she was like, "Do you want to go for a walk?" And I was kind of like, "Not really, but also I guess." So I was just like, "Yeah." And so she's saying, "Well, how long do you want to go for? We could do this thing and we get a coffee." And I was like, "I'm up for about 20 minutes." And she's like, "Okay." So we go out, we start walking. It's her neighborhood. And she starts talking about motivation and how she's getting a bit more into fitness. She's training for a triathlon. Unbelievable. Good for her. And she was saying how sometimes she needs like tough love or whatever. And I went, I need trickery. I said, I've realized I don't want tough love. I don't want people, I want to be accidentally manipulated into exercise. Anyway, about 40 minutes went by. She went, well, on that note, clearly I have completely lived up to that because we are nowhere near home and we have not done a loop and it's about a 30-minute walk back. And I was like, I'm cool with it. I was like enjoying myself. I wasn't worried. Once it was out, like it's kind of like if you trick me into saying this would be 5 minutes and then it's a good time, I will do an hour. But I realize I have to be tricked. So I'm constantly trying to trick myself. But anyway, it was just an amazing thing that I learned is that if someone just says this is good for you, that doesn't work for me. But if someone tricks me into it, I'll be very grateful.
I
Maybe.
It's reminding me of a tip that you actually mentioned on our in a much earlier episode, the just 5 minutes thing, which I
Told me
actually
this.
oh, I thought it was you. Okay, we came up with it together.
Maybe. Oh,
Um,
maybe.
well, it came from one of our earlier episodes, and I regularly use that with my client now. Just set a timer. Just start 5 minutes because all you need to do is to create momentum is to start the thing. It's really one step in front of the other, and that's how it builds, and that's how you get from a 5 minute walk to a 40 minute not really loop. Um,
I
I want
definitely think you told me that. So I don't know where it came from, but I remember I'm sure you told me, unless I've forgotten my own wisdom, because yeah, I think that's such a good one because it is that sort of, it makes you realize that you've got more, that mental obstacle is so much more than anything physical. It really is. And
yeah.
like, I use that in the Camino too. Be going up a really savage hill and I just be like, just do 10 more steps and take a little break because that's still progress. And if you don't have positive self-talk, it's not going to happen. It's not.
I love this, and I wanted to tell a little story time about how at the moment I'm doing a 12-week challenge with a couple of my friends. Started with the episode with Bronte on it, where it's 5 days a week, 30 minutes of exercise for 12 weeks. And I was sent a little Snapchat of like, oh, I'm just so tired today. I'm just gonna cop out and do a 30-minute YouTube exercise, like a really like mellow YouTube um yoga video, not anything like high intensity, not going for a run, not doing anything. And then I was like, I called myself out on it. I came back to them in another Snapchat and I was like, actually, I redact what I just said because if you guys had come up to me and said, "Oh, I'm going to do a 30-minute yoga video today because I'm really tired, my back hurts," I would say, "Yeah, you go, girl," because that's still a workout. And
Absolutely. I was about to get mad at
I
you.
know
Yeah.
I came up like, my self-talk came up really, really quickly and was like, "Oh, hang on, what is this word cop out or whatever?" And I put myself in the other put the shoe on the other foot. And if my friend had said that to me, what I would say. So I was like, I redact my statement, blah, 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 blah. And they both came back to me and said, I'm really proud of you. I'm really glad you redacted your statement because yes, yoga is really great. And if you have a sore back, it's kind of perfect. Um, and it's
And you're
still
still showing
ticking the
up. And
box.
absolutely, you're still doing it and you're still I think, yeah, I think that you are so like, because I think I've always found your motivation and things really inspiring. So I think like your expectation level for yourself is so high, and like, I would absolutely take that. If I did a 30-minute yoga class, I'd be like, damn, I don't need to work out for the rest of like the month. But my bar's way lower. But you know what I mean? So like it's so good that you pulled yourself. I wasn't someone else that went, hang on, you actually did it yourself, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I think as well, 30 minutes of exercise does not mean you need to come out being a sweating mess or whatever. I've actually done throughout this little challenge because with this whole being present thing, I really am unsure of how I'm feeling and everything. And sometimes I literally just crave to lie on the floor. And that's a really good way to be productive and utilize my time by lying on the floor. But I'm stretching and breathing as well. And yeah, I know
And that's
that,
being present, like all of that. You're
yeah.
bringing your anchoring yourself, all of that. So it's so, so healthy. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, no, and I think the challenge started because I wanted to do a little bit more cardio and everything. So that's why I had this like mental thing of like, oh, you can't be doing yoga every day. But it's actually been really enjoyable to me. And yeah, since the calling myself out, yeah, I've been actually enjoying my little lay on the mat stints just as
That's
much as the accomplishment of going for a run because there's a lot of me that jiggles around. So there's yeah, it's that divine, delicious polarity and actually being able to enjoy both of them and not feel bad about myself for either, you know?
Absolutely. Oh, that's such a good, and it's great to set yourself a tr challenge and to have that with people that I don't know, I think you're similar to me, is like showing up for other people. Again, I find easier than showing up for myself a lot of the time. So I think having that sort of thing of being in it and accountable is a really wise way. I mean, I guess it's another trick in a lot of ways, but
It is.
tricks work. You got to do whatever works. So rather than just being like beating, like if I beat myself up for not being a morning person and going for a run at 5 in the morning and stuff, like I would just beat myself up forever because that's not me, you know?
Yeah.
So going with what's you and stretching and yoga and breathing and all that is like one of the best forms of exercise anyway. So it's all what we've kind of like belief systems we've got that aren't necessarily true or serving us.
Yes, and another learning, actually, you reminded me, another learning I've had throughout this challenge is because I am the morning person, I do like to train in the mornings, or my runs have been in the mornings because I think Walnut, it's actually because my brain forgets it and then I don't, it's like gone from my memory. So it's actually like that kind of
Uh,
thing. But I remember messaging and being like, "Oh my God, I slept in and I haven't done my workout today, and that means that I'm not allowed any more rest days. It means that I have to do a workout every single day." And then I again was like, "Actually, hang on. Why don't I just do a 30-minute YouTube after work? Or why don't I just go for a 30-minute
mm,
walk before dinner? Like, why does it have to be in the morning? And that why does the morning mean that if I don't do it then, I'm not going to get a rest day? You know, like it's really
I
weird. It's
know.
been really good for me,
It's
actually, this little challenge.
it's really cool though that like you're recognizing like we all have these narratives and these belief systems. Like I do that all the time where if I'm like, well, I haven't done something by a certain time, that's that. It can't be done now. You know, it's
Mm.
written off for the day or whatever. Or
Yeah.
like actually saying before, like I was usually really good about every 10 or 10-ish episodes for this podcast, and I love doing it. And then I got really busy and I've been busy before, but not to that degree. And it was just I was so disappointed that I had missed, a milestone we've kind of made up together that like is great, but also what I realized was it made it so much harder in some ways for me to like get back into it because it felt like, well, it's ruined. And it's that all or nothing mentality is so
Yeah.
dangerous. 'Cause, like, here we are, we're back, it's great, I'm happy and this is a good time, good mindset and all the things. And it's just not a useful part of my narrative that I think if I fail or miss, like miss the next train, that I shouldn't go out at all instead of just waiting for the next train, which I've
Mm.
also done, but I've deeply considered once. I've missed the bus by a minute and I've been like, well, that's that. I shouldn't go out. Honestly, it's so funny how many ways that actually pops up in my brain now that I've recognized that thought pattern and I have to challenge it, and you're challenging yours as well.
I love that. And I love that we've come full circle because we were discussing the milestone 10 episodes and how we've navigated through that. And then we had that little gap recently, and it's like, okay, we'll just do it again. We'll just jump back on the horse when we're both ready. And here we are. So it's actually, I'm really loving this episode so much. We've come really, really
Yeah.
full circle. Kate, before we sort of start wrapping up and everything, on that note of coming back on to the 10-ish episode or whenever the episodes fall on our laps and is convenient for us both, do you have any last sort of things that are on the tip of your tongue that you wanted to mention or discuss with the Walnuts listening?
Yeah, I think it in some ways it's something I'm trying to self-talk as well, and probably similar with your 12-week challenge and yeah, all these things is like progress can look like barely anything and it's still progress. Like, it's
Mm,
just such an interesting example of like you talking about, oh, I'm copping out, but you actually are showing up and doing the thing, but you just think, well, because it's not exerting myself to 110%, it doesn't count. But doing that yoga is still progress. It's still part of it. And this, getting back on the podcast and for me, like having a day to chill or whatever is like progress can look like very, very little, but it's still progress. And like if you don't count it, you're always gonna be like, I'm not moving forward and I'm not doing anything. And that self-talk will perpetuate. But the second you start noticing all the little things that actually are progress and telling yourself that story and using evidence, you realize you do quite a lot. And I struggle with that. I have really high expectations for myself, and I'm having to be like, even if it's just little things, it's still progress. And whatever progress is, because we don't always have to be progressing all the time either.
mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love this. I love it so much. And as like a list writery person like us, for my 12-week challenge, I have printed out a little th it is in the walnut tree if you just want a template. But I have printed out and I color in the different types of sorry, my ear is ringing and it's very distracting. I printed out a little template and I color in the different types of workouts. So it is kind of like my little checklist. And red is for running and purple is for like miscellaneous, which is the YouTubes or just going for like a low impact walk or whatever. Um, and it doesn't bother me the different colors. They're colored in, they're checked off. Do you know what I mean? And that's the big key for for me in that self-talk about the copping out thing. It's like it's still a box, it's still checked. I still showed up for myself and did the thing that I committed to. So like it's my way of sort of navigating through um sticking to a long-term challenge. Similarly, oh my gosh, I don't know. I know we said wrapping up, but I've got another story. I just finished posting 365 reels. I've done a whole year of posting a reel a day. And I'm gonna do an
Gosh.
yeah, I'm gonna do an episode on this as well, Walnut. Um, how bizarre. And again, I had to, when I've committed to it, because I have open heart center, so commitment issues. But when I committed to it, I was like, I just have to not think about it. And I just have to make sure that I'm in the day gone, have I done a reel today, sort of thing, not putting too much pressure on myself. And there were days that I missed, but for my own integrity was like, well, as long as I back it up and still track and count and whatever. Whereas some people are like, oh, start again. But that wasn't that. I'm not too competitive with myself in that sort of way. It's like, okay, you're a human being and it's a year. Let's be realistic. But where was I going with this? Just that
Amazing though.
yeah, honestly, crazy. Yeah, I will talk about it when I've got a second, but just the achievement of doing the little hashtag this day out of 365 or coloring in my little box. It's still I suppose my what I'm trying to say is I still have my little list making tasks while still being able to be present with the thing that I said I was going to do.
Yeah, and I don't know whether this is the exact same message, is slightly different, but it just occurred to me as well, because we're very similar, is I mentioned I'm doing some work to my friend, and I was like, I mean, it's not super hard or anything. And she went, we've really got to unlearn the idea that if we're not working super hard, we're not still working or we're not still valuable. Right? Like
Yes.
like that exact, I mean, again, your yoga example is a perfect one. It's being like, it barely counts. And it's like, but it does count. And it shouldn't barely count. It counts because you're doing something. And just because it might not be the hardest thing in the world and you're not using all your skills, for someone else, that would be impossible. So we all have our different things. But also it's like, who's to say that just because you're not working that super burnout, and there's a whole millennial generational thing about why we are that way, which is
Hmm.
fascinating. But like that unlearning that just because you're not absolutely like at your stress like edge, that you're still not working or doing or showing up and like that we're enough just doing that and it's not lazy and it's not a cop out and it's like
Mm.
it's just like so hard to unlearn. It's so hard to unlearn and it takes a while. So even like you say, I don't think I'll ever give up on the list thing. I don't think you will either. But as long as we get some present time, great. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's still a win, and that's our version of, I used to call myself an active relaxer. I don't think that I am an active relaxer. I think I could stay in bed all day if I really felt the call. And
Yeah.
that was just conditioning. But there are people who that's their way of chilling out, is just folding the giant pile of laundry, or things like that. So it is, presence is what it is for you specifically, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yes, I love this discussion. I feel so accomplished right now, just thinking of all the little things that have popped up through this whole episode. Um, Kate, we haven't asked you in a little while. What does being a walnut mean to you?
I mean, I usually based off what we talked about today, I'm trying to think because I never have like a answer already locked and loaded or anything. But I think for me right now, being a walnut means like knowing knowing like the things that are true and the things that aren't. Like I feel like being a walnut is telling the story the way that is useful, positive, full of progress, full of kindness, and that, walnutting can be unlearning, not just learning new things, Walnutting can be unlearning.
Mm, I love it.
That
I
was
love
a
it.
rambling answer, but I was kind of like trying to get to the point, but it might not be the best one, but I gave an answer and now we know that's good enough.
It's It's still good enough. I love it. I love it so much. Um, Kate, Walnut is listening and like, oh my God, I've only just met this girl. I need to follow her or just like snoop on what she's up to. Where can the Walnuts find you on the internet if they want to connect with you?
So they can find me on Instagram at Miss K Bromley. And if you're I mean, maybe in the UK at some point, but if you're in America and you have Amazon Prime, you can get Shorts TV for like 7-day free trial and find my short documentary, which I directed and co-produced. It's called Where the Tracks Lead. So it's actually on, yeah, Amazon Prime now in America, which is super exciting for a couple of years. And it will be on various other things. So I'll share them then. I have no links. I'm not organized, but it is out there. So yeah, that's where you can actually see some of my work too, which is really exciting.
Delicious. And Walnut, a lot of Kate's stuff is already blasted throughout the whole Walnut Tree, like your film reel, the trailer for Where the Tracks Lead, all sorts of things. So you can connect inside the Walnut Tree as well if you want to like chat as a collective too. Um, but Kate, this has been absolutely divine. Thank you very much for your time and for popping back on Walnut Wednesday. Always a pleasure. I love you so much. You're so sexy. Um, this has been great. I love you.
Yeah.
And Walnut,
I
thank
love
you for your
you.
time. Thank you for your time as well, Walnut. We both appreciate it so much. And yeah, connect with us in any way, shape, or form that suits you. And I will be here to talk to you next week. And just one more time, Kate, I love you so much.
I love you too.
Happy Walnut Wednesday. Bye.